Hiya guys, welcome back. Oof. Well, an 18 hours it's been. Um, as you know, you always keep it real on this channel, so both the good and the bad. As you know, we were actually climbing on the crossing the glacier, the Hollental Furna, which is in front of me as it happens. Well, basically the crampons gave way. So the resultant fall, basically, because it's a Corrie glacier, it's very steep, and of course it's the very end of the season, so there's very little snow cover. So it's like sheet glacier ice. 100 meter fall ensued, which basically cheese grated my elbows. Obviously, trying to get the axe in. The axe wouldn't bite. The ice was just too hard, basically. So as a consequence, fortunately, I landed about 200 meters down from where I started. 100 meters, sorry. But obviously the aim then, obviously covered in blood, basically from the elbow wounds. But luckily, nothing else was damaged. By the grace of God, somebody was looking after me yesterday, I tell you. Yeah, a bit of a disappointing end to this adventure, to be honest. It's not what you wanted, but it could have been oh so worse. I mean, broken limbs, head trauma, etc., etc. But no, thankfully, as awkward as it is at the moment for me, I got me cast, stopped me from bending my arm. The other one isn't so bad. It's mainly the right one. I guess that's what was touching the ice and all the rocks that are embedded in it more than the left. So as a consequence, yeah, here I am in Garmisch, but in the hospital. I'm going to be here for about 3 days. I had an operation, minor operation last night, just to clean and ready, clean and stitch my right arm mainly. That's what the operation was for. And the other, they just did in the trauma suite, cleaned it there. Can't say from the mountain rescue down through the helicopter evacuation, all the way through to the treatment. Been fantastic every step of the way. Marvelous services and marvelous people. Really well looked after. Obviously, can't wait to get home, but that's a couple of days away yet. So I thought I'd bring you back for an update anyway. That's kind of what happened. We'll have an analysis in a few days. What went wrong, what could we have changed, etc., etc. Yeah, I guess when we put ourselves out there on the line, occasionally we run out of luck, don't we? And this is one of those times, I'm afraid. But fortunately, the consequences weren't anywhere near as bad as they could have been, thankfully. So, okay then, guys. So I'll just spin you around and see the marvellous view I've got in front of me, and then I'll catch you in a little bit when we have an analysis of the climb. Take care, guys. Room with a view. Hi guys, just coming from a run, and here to have a think and have a talk to you guys about what happened on Zugspitze. It's been a while now. It's the 22nd of December, just before Christmas, and it happened on the 12th of October, so it's about 10 weeks, something like that. Yeah, so excuse me. Yeah, what happened? Well, when you look back, it's a bit gutting, really. If that's one way of putting it. Not just about the accident, but the fact that we had absolutely perfect conditions. Everything was going perfect. You know, from down to the flights not being cancelled, all the way to all the connections. You know, the coach. You know, the little cogwheel train always running. At that time of the year, some of these services in Germany end. The one thing we didn't quite know what was going on was the Hollental Lager Hutti. We weren't quite sure whether it was going to be open or not because of the really good weather. They said they were going to open for another week. Consequently, we'd have stayed there. But as it happened, they didn't. And the reason given was that while the weather was good, they were running out of water because there's actually all electric is supplied by a hydroelectric scheme, and they were running out of headwater. So they were closed. We didn't really know that until we were actually basically in the Hollental Valley itself. So with that said, you know, because of that doubt, my thinking was, well, if we have to bivvy, I'm going to have to take extra equipment. You know, a lightweight sleeping bag, a bivvy bag, possibly a bag liner. You know, and all the paraphernalia you need to spend a night, you know, in a bivvy on a mountainside. And on a high level bivvy at that, we were talking, I think from memory, we're talking about 1,500 to 1,600 meters. So, you know, even though the weather was great, it is going to get reasonably chilly at night at that height, particularly on the north face of an alpine mountain. So this coloured my decisions right from the outset, really, as to try and keep weight low. Having looked at a number of good route guides on the Hollental, and looked at dozens of videos of people doing the route. The crux seems to be one of two things. I mean, it's made up of two via ferrata sections. One is relatively easy, and the other one is a little bit tougher. You know, they're not extreme by any means, but nevertheless, they are long and committing, particularly the second one. And obviously the glacier crossing. Now, it's not a huge glacier. It's still pretty massive. You know, it's a big old beast. And obviously you've got to cross the glacier, and there's a gap then between the rock wall and the glacier itself. You've got to, you know, basically bridge that gap, and then there's ropes then up to you have to haul yourself up onto the second via ferrata section, which I just about did. But let's get back now to, you know, why the fall happened. Well, bottom line, the blame is fair and square in my court. Instead of taking full-on crampons, 12 points, which I've got there in my climbing store, I decided to save myself £1 or £1.50 and go for microscope spikes. Now they're not cleats; they're more than that, but they're not crampons either. You know, and I've seen maybe 70 people on videos crossing this very glacier with such micro spikes. In fact, some are not even wearing spikes at all. But of course, the big difference between them and me and John did have crampons, by the way, is that it was at the very end of the season and there was no snow cover on the glacier. So basically, it was a sheet ice with an angle of around about, 30 degrees, particularly towards the top, the head of the glacier. So it's like walking on an ice rink, basically. There's no snow cover, it's denuded, it's blown off, it's all ended, you know, all the snow is long kind of gone. And ice spikes just don't cut it. So as you probably saw me in the video, I ended up having to cut steps literally into the ice to make any progress at all. And in doing so, they let go, basically. What ensued then was a fall stroke slide of around about 100 metres. Lacerated my right arm, basically the whole forearm came away, so it was like a huge flap, like a raw beef burger hanging off my arm, blood pouring out. Luckily, no nerve damage and no arteries, but it was a lot of blood. I can tell you that much. So much so he was struggling to hold the axe. The other arm was equally was lacerated badly, but not to the same extent as my right. And obviously you had global lacerations, your chest, your knees, your legs, from where you were trying to do the ISAC self arrest, which was never going to happen because we're talking about sheet ice here. There's no way that pick was going to bite into that, hard as iron ice. So I picked myself up when I did come to a standstill. Shirts shredded, your trousers, that were shredded, your phone, watch, all ripped from you, all scattered over the glacier surface. And my immediate intention then was to think, well, okay, I need to get off this glacier. So now descending was a no-no. And I seriously thought at the time I could possibly make the summit still. Deluded, I know, but at the time that's what I figured. So I shouted up to John that I'm going to make my way up, and I did so. We crossed the glacier, crossed the gap, and got clipped into the rope that's dangling down there from the second Via Ferrata section. That was done by cutting steps all the way, because the ice spikes were just rubbish in these conditions. They were a bad call, and as I've said before, my call. But anyway, by cutting steps in the ice, I managed to cross the glacier. So I managed to make the 100 meters that I'd fallen, plus the 100 meters there was still to go to get to the glacier gap. And obviously then, you discard the ice spikes, etc. Redeploy the Via Ferrata kit, and I managed to pull myself up the rope and get myself clipped into the first couple of what would you call it? I suppose pegs on the Via Ferrata. But my arms were shot. I mean, we're talking about, by this time shock had set in. I don't think it was a blood loss shock. It was more a shock of realization of what's happened and what's about to happen. In operation, more than likely, certainly hospital. I just couldn't pull myself up, and there was no strength in my arms at all. I was just, excuse my French, I was buggered. And I ended up about 7 meters above the glacier on a small ledge. So, I was clipped into the Via Ferrata. I couldn't go up, I couldn't go down. So I was just sort of like perched on this little ledge, which is about a foot wide, a foot and a half wide, half a meter. And I shouted up to John, I can't make the climb. Call in the rescue services, which John did. He'd made the climb before me. As soon as we got to the gap, he made the climb as I readied myself. So he was on a ledge which was probably about 15 meters above me. He made the appropriate calls, and as you saw, in due course, within an hour, the mountain rescue helicopter came and extracted me off the mountain. Professional, fast, got me down to the valley floor, and then obviously then it was helicopter then straight to the hospital, the clinicum there in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, where they triaged me and basically said there'd be going to be an operation on my right arm, which took place I think about 1 o'clock in the morning of the same day. From the mountainside, the theatre, all within the space of about 10 hours. And obviously what ensued then was 3 days convalescence, mainly for risk of infection. They didn't want infection setting in the arm, so they wanted me to stay in the hospital. Yeah, so as soon as the risk of infection had passed from the wounds, I was discharged. The accident happened on the Thursday, and I was discharged the following Monday. I've got to say the care from the nurses and the doctors in Germany was second to none, fantastic. And the friends I met there, in the ward or the room, there was three of us there, three of us, and all all were fabulous to spend some time with, albeit time you wouldn't have wanted to have spent, but nevertheless time. Great guys, and um, memories you'll never forget, really. But yeah, what an experience. Obviously, since then, I've been obviously all the stitches were taken out here in the UK. I could remove my cast, as you saw, with the drain in it. I was removed a few weeks later after arriving back in the UK, and basically undergoing physiotherapy because one of the issues I didn't mention was my shoulder. When I pulled myself up the rope and got myself clipped in, I just couldn't pull myself up on the via ferrata. So in the end, I was dangling off one arm and dislocating my right shoulder. And that was basically that was kind of the main reason I was curtains really, for far from the shock. That's why we weren't. That's why I weren't going to be climbing any more that day, or indeed climbing down. And it's this lingering shoulder injury that is probably going to be with me now for well, it's been 2.5 months now, and it's getting there. The mobility is getting back, and the strength's building, but it's a slow process. And I've been told it could take 6 months to a year. So until it's well, I wouldn't say 100%, but until it's 90% of the strength of my left, via ferrata and climbing, anything technical is going to be off the menu. So I'm working hard every day with my exercises that my physiotherapist has recommended me to do. So that's kind of where I am now. Big takeaways: take the right gear, don't compromise. I mean, it's crazy. I had the equipment, but I made the decision to go light, too light, and in the end, that's what caused the accident. So don't compromise. If you're doing glacier crossings, you need an ice axe, you need crampons. I had one, but not the other. Take a rope with you in the mountains. I always do. I had that, but the one piece of equipment I didn't have, and what I did need that day, was proper 12-point crampons. They were stuck in the climbing store back in the UK, and that was a mistake, and it could have cost me my life. And I'd just like to say, take a chance now just to thank John, for being stolid and solid on the mountainside, stuck with me all the way. So I appreciate that, John. Thanks. A better climbing partner you couldn't have had. And again, it's been hard for the family, particularly in the initial 4 or 5 days while I was still in hospital and all the unknowns, because obviously information disseminates, because I wasn't able to make any calls myself until the following day. It was all second-hand information to my wife and my children. So I know it was hard for them. I apologise to them for that. It's a difficult one. I mentioned this before. Should you be doing these things? It's a tricky one, isn't it? But you've got one life. Without being flippant, you've got to try and live it the best you can. I mean, in 40 years of hiking and climbing, I've never had an accident before ever. Never slipped. But of course, you're only as good as your last climb. And at this point, that's the big thing that people remember. They don't remember all the hundreds of previous trips. Before it's the accident on the glacier on the Zugspitze that family tend to harbour in their minds. Rightly so, because obviously it was a bad accident and could have been a hell of a lot worse. But there we are then. So take your crampons, take your ice axe, take your rope, And likewise, when you go on these via ferratas, use a via ferrata set. Don't go up there and think you can just scramble it. Because accidents happen. And sometimes they're not always your fault. I mean, on this route, there was 2 or 3 points really where pegs were missing, and you are literally hanging on the cable there, and you only have to slip, and you're talking vertical falls then. So yeah, don't compromise personal protective equipment. Really is probably my mantra. Wear a helmet. I mean, yeah, I did everything you could, but ticked every safety box apart from crampons. Went for the lighter, ice spikes, which obviously let me down this catastrophically. All right then, guys. Well, I hope that was mildly interesting. I hope you're all doing well. And again, like always, it's great to great to talk to you guys. So take care of yourselves and see you soon. So take care, yeah. Bye for now.